Hi everyone and welcome to my new video. This video will show you the detailed process of how I created my drawing, and you will also see later in the video why I called it Color Pencil Struggle. First of all, before we begin, this is my second drawing that I did of Fabian. I already made one in charcoal, which you can find on my channel as well. And for those who want to have a really close look into my technique, you can find a 2.5 hour long version on my full-length video section with no voiceover, just some background music. You might wonder why I've decided to make a second drawing of Fabian, and this is the reason. It was just a great photo. And I will show you the original photo in the upper right corner. Thank you again, Fabian, for allowing me to draw you again and using this photo as a reference. And just to let you know about my materials that I've used, this painting is 40 by 40 centimeters, and I made the drawing on Clairefontaine pastel matte paper, the white version. I do have this paper available in 50 by 70 centimeters, so I cut the paper to the size that I wanted it to have. And if you do this yourself, don't throw the paper away that you've cut off. You can use this for some studies or tutorials or some smaller paintings, so just keep the leftovers that you can use for other smaller projects perhaps. As for penciled, I used my Prismacolor pencil, and when I started I wanted to use my brush and pencil powder blender for this, until I realized that the powder blender does not really work that well with the Prismacolor pencils as they are wax based, and it works just better for the Polychromo pencils, which are oil based. But then I realized that I do not have the complete set of Polychromos here with me, and just, well, perhaps a quarter of all the pencils available and not the really colors that I need for the skin tones, and so, well, you know, these typical artist problems. I stick to my Prismacolors where I do have all and every color available, and so I used these ones. I still tried to use the powder blender in the beginning, but it did not really blend out at all, and so I put the powder blender away during the process. If you do not know, the powder blender itself is a powder, and when you use it you can blend your pencils as you can blend pastels. So if you apply it first on the paper and add your Polychromos over it, you can use these little handy blending tools and blend the pigments around, and it feels a bit like it does with pastels, which I wanted to try, but again it does not really work that well with the Prismacolor pencils. As this was quite a large size for a portrait, I decided to mount my pastel matte paper onto a sturdier surface, and I do have some MDF plates available, which were already cut to the size of 40 by 40, and so I decided to mount it onto an MDF board. So this will give me a really hard surface to work on, and it cannot bend or buckle, and so it was the perfect start for the drawing. Once I did the outlines for the drawing itself, I had to decide which colors to use. And therefore I sometimes use a website, which I will link here in the video. The good thing on this website is you can upload any reference photo that you are going to work from, and the website will split the photograph into all the colors that are contained in the photograph. So this tool will show you each and every color that is used for the photograph, and you can decide which color you want to pick for your drawing or painting actually, which at some times really help you decide which colors to pick, especially if you have a wide range of different color tones available, as you do have available if you have the complete Prismacolor set. So this one comes quite handy at some times. But keep in mind, even if you do not have the correct matching colors available, this is not such important overall. You will see in the end that my finished drawing will not have the complete same colors as the original photograph had, which is not a problem. I said this in quite many videos before. It is not that important to have the correct color tone used. It is more important to have the correct values, because you will never know what was the initial correct color, because the correct color is in a way quite relative. When the photo was taken in the first place, it already changed the colors to the live subject. Then this was transferred to the computer and perhaps modified, and so the colors were changed again, depending on the computer screen that the modifier actually had. Then it was sent to you, probably, or in this case it was sent to me, and my computer screen has different color settings probably, and so perhaps I changed the colors again. And now imagine you have printed the picture to draw from, and so the printer again changes the color. if you have used a tablet, your tablet might have another color setting than your computer screen had. So this is the reason why the correct color is not as critical as having the values right to have something look realistically. Just see that the values are correct. In case you wonder, the overall process to complete this piece took me about 15 hours. So in general, having in mind that this is a quite large portrait, 15 hours is, I think, quite an okay range for this. And you also have to keep in mind that colored pencil are really slow medium, but compared to any other art medium, you have the most control by using the colored pencil. So this was something I wanted to try out. And for colored pencil you need layers over layers over layers, which you can see making me in this drawing process. One thing that I always struggle in colored pencils, which I do not that much struggle in any other medium, is to get the values correct. So I started with the eyes, as you can see, and at some point I thought, okay, looks nice. So continue with the next area and the next area. And after having it done for a while, I realized that it did not really look the way as I wanted it to look, because the values were not as dark as they needed to be. And something that helps me in this case is shading in the darkest areas around the area that I'm drawing currently. Having something very dark close to the area that you are working on, me especially, helps in seeing if the value that I'm drawing is correct, or is it has to be darker, or is it perhaps too dark already. So this is something I do during my process, and then I go on and correct the values over and over until I think it looks great. And as you might know from my other videos already, I am not an artist who can render one area completely to the end and then move on to the next area. This is something my brain just cannot handle. So I can try to finish the eye as I try to do here, and then move on to the next area, but then I realize that it's just not correct in value and that things have to be changed and so on. I know that there are many artists out there that prefer rendering one area perfectly and then move on to the next and the next and the next. So more or less working like a printer. But this is something I just can't do. My brain is just not working like this. What you also need to keep in mind is the kind of paper that you're using for your artwork. Normally for color pencil I go for Bristol Vellum or Bristol Smooth paper, as this has already a smooth surface. But for this one, as you know, I decided for the pastel matte paper, as I wanted to use the powder blender, which did not work, but I still stick to this paper. And this kind of paper has quite a unique texture to it, and it grabs the colored pencil very well. It can maintain its texture quite for a long time, and you can make many layers not running into issues that your texture might be gone. So returning back to the drawing, I slowly and steady added more and more pigment to the paper, created my skin tone and the values, and for the skin tone itself I used about, I think, 20 different colors. Everything in the range of beige, browns, reds, some pinkish tones, quite many colors, because I always struggle with which color to use the best to achieve the look that I want to have. So I sometimes add very much all the colors that I have available that are on the range of the skin tones, and then I realize this is too much of the colors and too many, and yeah, I need to figure out how to create skin tones better in colored pencil perhaps. It's on my to-do list. But for this one I was quite okay with the colors that I got. And when I've added all the pigments that I thought I need, I decided that it was time to use my solvents and to blend the pigments into the paper to have a smoother look to it. And my solvent that I use is the Bob Ross paint thinner, which is an odorless one. There are many different, so just use the brand that you would like to use. And this in a way feels like oil painting, as you can move the pigments around and correct some things. And I do this over and over again. So added some more layers over the solvents, once it was dry of course, and blend it again and again and again. And when I think an area was in a way complete, I used the fixative and fixed the layers so that the solvent added again will not smudge the layers that were already completed underneath. Something that I found really hard, especially for this size of a drawing, was creating the hair with the colored pencil. Normally it's quite easy to draw hair on smaller portraits, so like A4 size or so, where the hair section is rather small, but in this case it is quite large, and even on top of that he has quite long hair. I would have needed to make very long, fine lines with the colored pencil to create the haircut that he had, and this was something I really did not know how to do to make it look as I wanted it to look. So for now I decided to just block in the hair with a darker color, just to have it in place, and to work on it a bit more later on. And now comes the part where the color pencil struggle actually started. As you might have seen in the beginning on the photo that I showed you, he's wearing a cool pullover or sweater or however you call it. This was something I knew from the beginning, and I was just too fascinated from this photograph to probably think about any issues that I might run into later on, and so I decided to use color pencil for this, although I had at this point no idea how I can render this sweater with colored pencils. And at this point I realized, Michael, you still have no clue how to do this. Well, I just started facing more and more difficulties, as I really did not know how to draw it. I could have drawn it completely from the photograph, so actually stitch by stitch until I've created the sweater that he's wearing, but this, I have no idea how long this would have taken me. Hours, weeks perhaps, I don't know. So I just started in a way to create the texture of the sweater, and it never really had the look that I wanted it to have. The color tones in a way were correct when you stand about a meter away from the drawing, but the overall look was not as sweater-like. And as I tried to do everything as perfect as I can, I struggled a lot. Until I came to a point where I thought to myself, Michael, you are way too impatient for this. This was the point where I decided to cheat. Yes, I cheated. And grabbed my oil paints. Don't judge me. I just did not see how I was able to finish this drawing in a way that I wanted it to look in the end, and so I decided to let the oil colors save me. And what I basically did is I just mixed my skin tones that I've used for the colored pencil drawing so far, and I glazed over some areas where I think I needed to do some corrections. And this is more or less just the oil paint, very little of it. Dip your brush into it and dry brush over the areas that you want to adjust. I did not really use any liquid or something, what you would normally do in a glaze. I just used small amounts of the pigments, glazed over it, so it feels a bit like applying makeup. All the girls among you should know what to do. And so you can tilt the colors and correct areas and darken areas in a way more efficient and quick way. And for me it meant in a way instant satisfaction, because I could see the changes right away and way quicker as I was able to see with the colored pencil. I realized that some areas need to be much darkened, corrected in value, and I changed it, and then was the point where I came to the haircut. And in oil paints I find this quite simple. I had the base layer down already, and then I normally use a liner brush, make a very thin color mixture. So I just mix the color that I want to use and add quite some amount of liquid to it. And then you can just use your liner brush. I don't really know how to describe it in detail, but you can see in the video how I made this. And the hair itself has about, I think, 3 layers. And each layer is getting lighter and lighter. And by using the liner brush, you can create quite nice, thin, long hairs, which look in a way quite realistic in the end. So the haircut itself does not look as photorealistic as I might have wanted it to look, but it was quite okay for me, as I liked the look of it. And as I still had to do the pullover, I just left it as it was. Coming to the pullover, I still had no really idea how to render it, even in oil colors. So I thought about it and made, let's call an idea, how you can create a texture. And then I thought about, well, why not making the pullover a bit more impressionistic? So not as smooth and detail rendered as the face itself, so just make a contrast to the otherwise realistic look. And by having this idea, my mind just applauds to me and then, yay, Michael, great idea, let's do this. And so I did. I mixed the colors that I wanted to use and just made some dots where I thought they should be to create a somewhat sweater-like texture. as you can see, it took me quite a while. It was not perfect, but in a way I liked the result. I liked it much better than I had the result with the colored pencil before. And of course it was way quicker. Just putting the color pencil down for the sweater took me about, I don't know, 2 hours or so to complete as far as I got. And the application of the oil color was about 20 minutes or so, so a lot of a difference. Much more time efficient than the color pencil were. If you of course have any idea how I could have created the texture with the colored pencil, not spending 20 hours for the pullover itself, please leave me in the comments. I would be happy to get some more tips and tricks, as color pencil is not my main medium. Always thankful for input and ideas how I could have made things differently or could have changed things. And finally, when the pullover was done and everything was as I wanted it to look, I came back to the hair again and glazed over it with some lighter colors, just to make the haircut look more realistic. And basically this was it for this painting, painting. And now you know why I called it Color Pencil Struggle in the thumbnail. Because it was. I hope you liked this video and found it quite useful that other people run into issues as well and don't know how to proceed and try to find a way out to make it as good as they can. If you have any comments, please leave me below. Would be happy to chat with you. If you have questions, also leave me below. And if you have not yet subscribed to my channel, I would really love you to do this to not miss any of my new videos coming. And until then, I wish you a great day. Bye bye.